It's May, and you can always count on a few things: rain and campus controversy over speakers. Campus bias at the dais next on Campus Roundup. Hello, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is Campus Roundup at the College Fix. Our top story segment this week focuses on bias at the dais. Is it possible that Donald Trump is being uninvited or not invited to speak and give commencement addresses? Many Republicans seem to be not invited. To talk more about this, we welcome Stone Washington, a history major at Clemson University and a journalist for the College Fix. Stone, you've written a really interesting article about exactly this topic. Tell us a little bit about your story and what you gleaned from this by doing some research.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Duke. And I was just really inspired by President Trump. I'm a very avid supporter of him, and that kind of led me to just wanting to stand up for this inherent bias towards conservative presidents that are seeing on mainstream universities here in America. And I just was really disheartened to hear that not any major school had invited him for a commencement address for 2018. I believe he's just only slated to speak at the U.S. Naval Academy this month, but no other school has reached out to him, none of the Ivy League schools or other major universities. And while they have reached out to President Trump, they've reached out to a number of other lesser-known speakers. I believe they reached out to Hillary Clinton. I believe Yale University's reached out to Hillary Clinton, and Al Gore slated to speak somewhere. I even believe Vice President Pence will be speaking at Hillsdale College. And they have just a host of other less prominent speakers that are going to be delivering addresses at other schools, but President Trump hasn't been invited to speak at one of these major universities. So that really made me want to expose this as just kind of an injustice to the White House. And so I just want to write about that.
You made some really great points, and you just followed up on them a little bit there. You've got all sorts of high-profile liberal Democrats at all the Ivy League schools. I know the American president hasn't spoken at an Ivy League school, but the Canadian Premier, Justin Trudeau, is going to be speaking at New York University. And so you have this argument now, and it's a good one, that you look at how all these slots are being filled by really progressive Democrats. And Mike Pence, who's the vice president of the United States, is speaking at Hillsdale, which is a great school. But there seems to be a marked difference. You mentioned last year, in his first year, one of the only really non-military school Donald Trump spoke at was Liberty University, which is also thought of as a conservative Christian college. Why do you think, in the course of your research for writing this article, what do you think the main reasons are that Donald Trump is not being invited really much any place?
I ultimately believe that these schools they have a silent disliking for President Trump, just almost an inherent bias against conservative presidents like President Trump. He is actually he's just such a unique president in and of himself. He's not like a lot of the other presidents that have come before him, and most of these schools are used to just either more moderate Republicans or just more liberal Democrats like Obama and Clinton. And so I think it's just because he's such a revolutionary president. He's just a patriotic person who just loves America so much and so deeply. And I think this just goes against these schools, their paradigm there. I just believe they have more of a almost more of an anti-American sentiment on some of these schools, and they just they just see President Trump as just an anomaly they wouldn't want to invite on their campus because of that. And I believe that's ultimately led them to just silently snub President Trump and not invite him to their schools.
To read more stories like Stone Washington's, please follow the College Fix on Twitter and Facebook. Stone Washington, thank you so much for your time today. We hope to talk to you again real soon. Time now for Talking Campus, our weekly discussion with members of the College Fix editorial team. Today I'm joined by College Fix assistant editor, Dave Huber, for a conversation about a bias at the dais, this ongoing problem we seem to have with conservative speakers on campus generally. But at commencement time, it's interesting how few cabinet members, president, vice president, and his cabinet, are actually being invited to speak. Dave, talk a little bit about this. The College Fix has written some good articles about it.
Yeah, I mean, going back a couple of years now, for example, back in 2013, the Young America's Foundation did a little study about the 100 top universities, and they determined that 62 out of 100 speakers that were invited were liberals. A mere 17 were conservative, and then the remaining amount, they could not determine the ideology. A year after that, an article by Campus Reform seemed to make the numbers maybe a little bit better, but still 2-1 liberals to conservatives. Really shouldn't surprise anybody, considering, I mean, the way conservative invitees to speak, whether it's, at a commencement or a convocation or just to have a general talk, a speech about something. I think a lot of colleges, I mean, first of all, it's very similar to the media in that they're in their own little insulated bubble. They think that, a lot of people, or pretty much everybody else, thinks the way they do. An example, recently at Cornell, there was a big controversy about Dick Cheney coming to campus. I mean, the vice president, he's a former vice president, yet he, even professors, it wasn't just students, professors were openly speaking against him making an appearance at Cornell.
Yeah, and you would think that when you have a Republican president and a Republican Congress, a Republican Senate, you would think that times like these, we would be seeing that gap at least close a little bit. But instead, what's happening is out of office Democrats, even as I mentioned in a previous segment, even the Prime Minister of President of Canada, Justin Trudeau, is going to be speaking at NYU, and very few of Trump's cabinet seems to be speaking anywhere. And so in a time like this where Republicans do seem to control government, the numbers don't seem to be getting any closer, do they?
No, and I mean, you'll see. I mean, Trump is a completely different type of animal. Obviously, I mean, nobody predicted it. He is very polarizing, no doubt, on the left, especially so, more than pretty much arguably any conservative higher office holder, but even among conservatives, and obviously the people in between. So it's not surprising when you think about it that many of Trump. Anybody associated with him are not going to be invited. In this case, besides the liberal and progressive thinking against him, it's the way colleges are today. They're trying to avoid pretty much any controversy whatsoever. And, who's going to bring more of that than anybody associated with the president?
Talk a little bit about your experience going to watch commencements and dealing with speakers, who the speakers have been chosen to be.
Yeah, I mean, for example, it goes back all the way to, my own undergraduate days. Joe Biden was the speaker. A funny little anecdote, a buddy of mine who is fairly conservative, he was actually kind of, just to himself, but, only those around us could hear it, is that he was kind of like heckling Joe. And a couple of professors that were sitting right in front of us were turning around and giving him mean looks. Today that would probably be, I don't know, maybe a biased response team would have been called on him. Also at the University of Delaware a few years ago, a man named Brian Stevenson was the speaker. And overall, he's a really good, his organization, the Equal Justice Initiative, they help individuals that have been mischarged or overcharged in the criminal justice system. They provide legal advice and backing to them. But however, he's invited to speak at a big college's commencement speech, and there he is talking about how slavery has never ended; it's just merely evolved. And I mean, you can see people in the audience just looking around like, aren't we supposed to be celebrating here and not like, being brought down? I mean, it's supposed to be a joyous day. And similarly, a few years ago, a friend of mine was at the VCU, a Virginia Commonwealth University commencement, and a member of the professor was up there talking about, white privilege. I mean, you can actually hear the audible moans coming from the audience. Like, again, this is supposed to be a celebratory event, and here we are being lectured about, all our various sins.
Well, if there's one thing the progressive left will not do, it's miss an opportunity to lecture anybody within earshot about all of the many sins of America, the many sins of traditional values, and the very many sins of white patriarchal culture, right? They won't miss an opportunity, however much they bum out the people sitting in the audience.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, again, they never let a moment go to waste where the message could be given across. I mean, it's a joy and celebration. It seems to be two concepts that are anathema to the left. I just don't get it.
Well, if people are happy, they're not going to be politically as active as the left wants them to be. Be sure to stay up on all the latest news and information from the College Fix editors by joining us on all of our social media platforms. Dave Huber, as always, it's great to talk to you, assistant editor at the College Fix. Thanks for your time today. Perhaps surprisingly, this is one of those issues that I can't get myself all worked up about. Yes, is it small and petty and juvenile that most major universities won't invite Republican speakers to commencement, won't invite conservative speakers to commencement? Of course it is. Are they doing their students and their families a tremendous disservice by only giving them the same regurgitated left-wing pap again and again? Sure. Do I feel bad for kids at NYU or who have to listen to Justin Trudeau, of all people, slip across the border to lecture us about the evils of capitalism and some weird sock pattern of the day? Yes, I do feel bad for them. But the real problem I have, the universities, before I get to that, universities have the right to do that kind of stuff if that's what they want. I mean, I believe in free markets, and if what universities want to impose on their kids is more and more and more leftism at commencement, so be it. I do feel bad, though, for the kids and the families. That's what I feel bad about, because when you look at these lectures that these kids are getting at commencement, that's what they are. They're not speeches. They're not uplifting messages about going into the world and doing good. They're not about optimism. They're not about the future. They are about tedious liberal left-wing talking points. They are about slandering other Americans. They are about pretending to uplift some people by holding others down underwater. It doesn't make any sense. This is not how kids want to wind. Even the most liberal kids want to wind up their college career with another sermon, another example of liberal virtue shaming, progressive privilege on display. That's the real problem, that leftist academic drones and the people they invite to campus are so humorless, so drab, so dour, that they rain on every parade. I mean, better to be rained out for commencement than to have to listen to another Cory Booker, right? That's the final fix. We'll see you next time. For more videos and original articles, visit thecollegefix.com. And don't forget to like The College Fix on Facebook and follow on Twitter to receive your daily dose of right-minded news and commentary from across the nation.